Thank you, President McMahon. And to the distinguished faculty, parents, and friends gathered here, good morning. It's an honor to be part of this joyous celebration of achievement. And to the Kettering class of 2018, congratulations. Now, those of you graduating today, do me a quick favor. Just take a look around. Everyone you see on this stage, everyone in the audience, the ones who came to share this moment with you, we're all here for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that's to celebrate you. Now, very few of life's milestones come with such pomp and circumstance, well, at least outside of Hollywood and politics. But so I encourage you to really enjoy this moment, and amid all the parties and excitement, take the time to truly appreciate what you've accomplished before you move on to the next challenge. Now, as a proud member of the Kettering University class of '91, and yes, I can hear my godchildren saying, "Oh my gosh, that was in the 1900s." I know as well as you do that earning a degree here is not an easy endeavor. You've been pushed and inspired and held to the highest standards of achievement by some of the world's most respected scientists, innovators, and academics. That's what you came for. We all chose Kettering because we're doers. It's not enough for us to understand how things work. We have to make them work better. We want the tools and know-how to turn bold ideas into action. We want the perspective to see possibilities in every problem, an opportunity in each obstacle. Most of all, we want to make a difference. Now, we are living in one of the most creative and innovative periods of human history, where incredible things happen every day. And the fact that hopelessness and even some of the hate that dominates our headlines can even exist in such an era of possibility is the tragic irony of the modern world. The future will be driven by our collective ability to resolve this disturbing dichotomy. And much of this Herculean task will fall on you, and you're more than ready. I know who you are. I've had the opportunity to spend some quality time with several of you the last couple of days, and I know what you're capable of. You see the world differently than the generations before you. You don't run from change, you chase it. And I am confident that the collective and creative energy you are about to unleash on this world will help us bridge the divides and find solutions. Looking at you, I see the tipping point, the generation with the ability and the will to question what has come before and create what comes next. Now, my task here today is to share some insight to help you meet that challenge, along with words of wisdom that will inspire you to take all that you've learned and experienced here and use it to build a life of meaning, purpose, and deep personal satisfaction. No pressure, right? No pressure at all. Now, you're Kettering grads, so I can't get by with the usual commencement platitudes like follow your dreams or find your passion, work hard, or reach for the stars. Striving for excellence is already part of your DNA. It's what got you this far. So instead of offering advice today, I'm going to give you permission to take risks, make mistakes, learn from them, and reinvent yourself as many times as necessary until you discover who you really are and where you can have the most lasting influence and impact. It's harder than it sounds, particularly for you overachievers, and especially in this era of oversharing when private missteps can become public humiliation so quickly. And you're going to have to ignore the trolls and the haters and even the expectations of well-meaning people who love you enough to think they know what's best for you. Now, most of all, you're going to have to if you're going to become all you're meant to be, you're going to have to do something that's really counterintuitive to almost everything you've been taught so far. You are going to have to ignore the math. And yes, I said that in front of a bunch of engineering graduates. Okay. Now, you're going to have to let go of all the ways you've learned to use hard data and analyze the options, assess the risk, and find the right answer. We assign a lot of arbitrary values to make sense of the world and figure out our place in it. We measure our worth and our potential by random things like age, weight, GPA, credit score, or by the number of likes, shares, and retweets. And recently, we seem to weigh our importance and influence by how many strangers follow us on social media. We track our career paths against our peers, comparing promotions and paychecks without regard to any of the variables that make those calculations unreliable and irrelevant. Now, tell me this, if someone is further down a path to a place that holds no meaning for you, are they really ahead? We treat life like a zero-sum game, keeping score of who gets what and who gives what, becoming aggrieved victims when the balance is not in our favor. We're constantly building mental models and running scenarios of likely outcomes for every decision and action. We want to be sure. We want to be careful. We want to be safe. And above all, we don't want to be wrong. Math is about answers and certainty. Life is about open questions and possibility. In life, math often takes the form of conventional wisdom, and no one has ever changed the world without challenging it. Conventional wisdom is open to challenge because, like math models, it is based on assumptions. All those assumptions carry the perspective, the bias, and the agenda of the people who made them. It's bad math, even when it's done in good faith. So we need each of you to challenge assumptions, defy expectations, and take leaps of faith and logic to open new directions of thought and achievement. It's okay if you make mistakes, if you fail while daring greatly, as long as you keep trying and learning and testing the limits of possibility. That's what progress actually looks like. Now, it doesn't always go fast enough, and it rarely follows a straight path. But progress is always driven by people who are willing to see the world differently, ignore the math, and use their own dreams and personal values to chart a new way forward. Now, I've seen that play out on the world stage as well as in my own life. My parents both grew up in the Jim Crow South. And when it came time to start their family, they left everything behind in Louisiana and moved north to Indiana in the 1950s because they wanted their kids to grow up unbowed by the burden of bigotry. They soon realized that racism didn't stop at the state line, and ignorance and intolerance weren't regional. They stayed in Indiana despite that because in addition to some racial challenges, their adopted home also had blue-collar jobs for hardworking men like my father. To my parents, work was opportunity. And they worked multiple and sometimes demeaning jobs to make ends meet for us. I was the youngest of 5 kids at the time, and when I was born, our whole family was living in this upstairs 2-bedroom apartment. And what my mother wanted most in life was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch house in a good neighborhood. It's all she wanted. And looking back, it was such a modest dream, but to her, it was everything. And my parents were determined to make that happen. So I remember we'd drive around neighborhoods and looking at homes we couldn't yet afford, wondering what it would be like to play in such a big yard or have enough space to sit around the table all together for dinner. And by the time I was 4 years old, my folks had put together just enough money for a down payment, and they found my mother's dream house. I remember wearing my best Sunday dress when we piled into the car to attend an open house. And I can still see my father walking up that sidewalk, filled with pride in his achievement, chest up, shoulders back, head higher than I'd ever seen it before, with more than a bit of swagger in his step as he led his family toward the dream fulfilled. He had never been so tall. The house was tangible proof that anything was possible with enough hard work and perseverance. But we never made it through that door. We didn't even make it off the sidewalk. You see, people in the house saw us coming, and they came out to encourage us to look elsewhere. I remember language like, "You wouldn't be comfortable here." No one else in that neighborhood looked like us, and they wanted to keep it that way. My parents had the money, the standing, the stability to buy that house. We were raised to have the heart and character to be great neighbors and valuable members of that community. But none of that math mattered, because the conventional wisdom at the time said that letting a family of color move in would diminish the value of every home in the neighborhood. And I'm sure they told themselves it wasn't racism, it was just good financial sense. Now, a lot has changed since then. People know better, people do better. But remnants remain because it's easier to rely on conventional wisdom than to challenge the assumptions and create a new reality. But when you do, interesting things can happen that open up new opportunity for everyone. Now, Marvel Studios' Black Panther is a great example. Before that movie broke box office records and pulled in more than $1 billion worldwide, conventional wisdom in Hollywood said there was no market for a movie based on characters of color, that black actors could not draw domestic or global audiences needed to make the financials feasible. Now, until Disney decided to ignore that universally accepted math, then invest the same huge production and marketing budgets routinely given to other films in the same genre. And the paradigm shifted overnight. As soon as the first box office results were in, a century of bedrock belief wiped out just like that. And now the opportunity has opened up a whole new generation of storytellers, and for those of us who really just love watching great movies. Now, when challenge like that happens in any part of our work or our world, we have a choice to make. We can be angry at the wasted potential that never had a chance to be realized, bitter about all the opportunity denied, or we can use any sign of progress as evidence that transformative change is possible and prepare ourselves to drive it. Now, I choose to drive. I made that choice at 4 years old, the same day we were turned away from that open house, after a little tough love from my mom, of course. It was a long walk back down that sidewalk. And by the time we got home, it was clear to me that my father was changed in ways I could not understand, but I knew he'd never be the same. It was the first time I'd ever been aware of being excluded, the first time I'd seen people I loved hurt by exclusion. It was also the first time I can remember feeling hate coming at me and coming from me. I hated the people responsible for that new sag at my father's shoulders, the way his head hung just a little bit, even when he was standing straight and being strong for us. I said as much to my mother that night with all the angry fury a 4-year-old can muster. And her response in that moment has done as much to change the shape of my life as anything before or since. She stopped me in mid-fit and said, "We don't hate in this house. We pray for people who don't know any better." And we did, many, many times. Now, it may not have changed the hearts of the people we prayed for, but it certainly changed mine. And that's what really mattered. My mother wasn't teaching me the power of forgiveness or to turn the other cheek. Her goal was to help me learn to face unfairness without being diminished by it. She's the one who first taught me to ignore the math, giving me permission to create new opportunities for myself and for others. Now, we've all been taught that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but the goal of life isn't to get us to the end as quickly as possible. It's not even to get us from goal to goal in record time. Whenever I forget that, whenever I get too far in my own head, too wrapped up in what I'm trying to do and frustrated about the obstacles in my way, I hear my mother in my head asking, "What are you doing to leave an interesting wake?" Now, I can't count the number of times in one form or fashion she's asked that question over the course of her life. You know, what it means is, how are you helping others? How are you contributing to the world? What are you doing to inspire people? It's a reminder that it's not all about me or you, it's about all of us. And sometimes the best way to get where you're going is to step back and find a way to help someone else get ahead. Because the beauty, the meaning, and the purpose of a life well lived isn't found in what you get, It comes from what you create and the path that you leave for others to follow. Now, much of my life and career have been dedicated to creating spaces where change can happen, doing my part to lay the foundation for the future I want to see, which is a world in which no one feels like my father did, standing on the sidewalk of that house. A world in which little girls don't need to pray for the owners of closed minds and hard hearts. A world in which we all belong, regardless of what we look like, who we love, or where we come from. Now, Kettering class of 2018, now that you have officially received permission to ignore the math, challenge the assumptions, and change the world, how are you going to use it? What will you do to leave an interesting wake? I, for one, cannot wait to find out. Congratulations and good luck.